Okay, so today we're going to talk about the methods and effects of government intervention. So what protagonist is affected by this intervention, and different methods. So we've seen, in the last lesson about market failure and what the governments can do about market failure. Whether it's under provision of products in the market, or over provision, or public goods, how the government must provide the public goods and why. Now we're going to look at other methods they intervene and who that affects. So one very common method of intervention in the market is an indirect tax. Remember, an indirect tax is on the product or service. It's a tax put on the product or service. There can be two types. You've got ad valorem, or in Italy, IVA. We know IVA is put on, I don't know, if you buy anything in the shops, you have to pay the IVA. Or it could be a specific amount per unit. For example, petrol per litre, we pay the tax on each litre. So it can be those two ways. The tax will affect the producer, it will impact on the producer and the consumer. If you look at this diagram, we've got the tax which will reduce the supply, but the original price is here, the original equilibrium is here, so the original price is here. The price that the customer pays is a little bit increased to P1, so that's how much they pay in A. But the received price is P2 by the producer, so from the equilibrium until P2 is what the producer is paying. This obviously, this part from P1 to P2 is going to the government, that's the tax. So they're paying different amounts here, the consumer and the producer. You can see that that's called incidence. The incidence is the different payments by the producer and the consumer. Now, the incidence depends on elasticity. If it's a very inelastic demand, here we've got a vertical demand, very inelastic, mainly the consumer will pay. The producer will be able to pass it on, and obviously being having the objective of profit, he will want to pass it on to the consumer, and it will be passed on. They will pay a little bit, but the majority, if we can see here, is paid by the consumer. Alternatively, if it's a very elastic demand, very horizontal demand, the producer will have to pay much more of the tax. He won't be able to pass it on to the consumer because that will really ruin his profit, his market share. So they have to accept paying most of the tax. The incidence falls according to the elasticity of demand, and those inelastic, the tax is paid more by the consumer, and those elastic products, demand elastic, is paid more by the producer. But also, elasticity of demand is important, because if a demand is elastic, putting a tax on an indirect tax on a product might actually reduce the total revenue of the tax. So the government needs to really think about this. You know, mainly we tax inelastic products like cigarettes and petrol because we know, their necessities, that people will continue buying them, and then the tax revenue will go up and not down. If it's inelastic, the tax revenue goes up. Subsidies will increase supply. Here we can see supply has shifted to S1 and reduced the price. The price has also been reduced. The original price here is P. The customer will receive some benefit. This is the new price. P1 is the new price. But also the consumer will receive a little bit of benefit too. The producer will receive a little bit of benefit too. So there's incidence for subsidies as well. So you could have direct provision of goods and services where the government provide goods and services directly. We see this with hospitals, with housing, or with health, or transport. And the main reason for this is equity. It's to make a society much more equal, because we know, the poor, these services are very expensive, and it will fall more heavily on the poor who have a disposable income much less than the rich. So it is mainly for equity, and we know, without this provision, the market will under-provide. But the criticism is that the goods are not efficiently provided for. I mean, we can see in a market situation there is a continual pressure to improve, to find innovative solutions, to really find ways of producing that are cheaper or better. And the workers are very motivated towards this. In the public sector, there's no profit motivation, there's no fear even of losing a job or of making a loss, etc. So people generally do resist change, resist innovative, different solutions, also can bond together and really hold the government to ransom and demand their interests rather than the customer interests are considered. So this is a criticism of goods and services being directly provided by governments. You've got also maximum and minimum pricing. That's one way of intervening. The price controls, we can see in England we've got rent control, and historically we've controlled rents because people need to live in a house, and if it becomes very, very expensive, it really impacts heavily on equality. People can't afford rent or spend most of their income on rent. It's a heavy burden. So, or petrol. In some countries like Iran, there's maximum prices for petrol or staple foods. During the coronavirus, the Italian government put a limit on face masks. They said there's a maximum price on face masks. But the big problem is it can create shortages. It can therefore create a black market. Look, we look at here's the maximum price. If the equilibrium is here and the maximum price is here, there will be a shortage, because at this price the supplier is only willing and able to provide at this price, and there's so many more people wanting it, that shortage might be filled by the black market. It's difficult to stop a black market if people really want the product. They are prepared to pay on the black market. Here, the supplier will provide this many, but obviously people want a lot more, so it doesn't really resolve this problem of the poor not having enough money if there's not the products. A minimum price is used often to discourage consumption on demerit goods like cigarettes, or to protect people's wages. For example, farmers have a minimum price often on their products. They must charge a certain amount, and in that way they can be assured of an income and maintain, a country can maintain its competence in producing its food, its own food, by putting minimum prices on food, so that then the competition doesn't force the prices down. But that could also create an informal black market, because the prices may be too high for many people. Here we've got again an excess supply, and many people won't want to pay this high price. That will mean some looking for black market produce. Buffer stock scheme. This was used by the European Union in agriculture, where to maintain a stable price, if prices go up and down so much, they fluctuate so much, they can, when the prices go up, buy the produce and put them in a warehouse, and then when the prices go down, release this produce. And that will stop the prices going too up and too down. This was criticised in Europe because it created, mountains of food and lakes of wine. They called them wine lakes, because of this buffer stock being bought from farmers. So that's a method they can use. Also, to intervene in the problems with information failure. Remember, a lot of the problems with demerit and merit goods are information failure. They can provide information that, for example, on warnings on cigarette package, that's providing information. Public health campaigns, nutrition information on food, this is all a way of getting the information out there, so people will buy more or buy less according to the information given. So that is a way of resolving that information failure.